Welcome to Vibrational Revelations. I'm Elena.
I am Alejandro.
And today we have a special guest back with us again for the second episode. We just did one of the incredible episodes on goddesses. This was probably one of the most exciting episodes that we've done. Fascinating, exciting. I think it's going to bring up a lot of clarity, hopefully, for many, many people who are not sure about, are you following a goddess that is a high frequency, or are you following someone that is a low frequency? You're trying to connect energetically, because what you are trying to connect to and embody will expand and be enhanced within yourself. So again, be mindful. And really, our message is do not worship anyone and connect to your core essence and be here, the unique you that you came here to be.
The divine expression of you within you.
Exactly. Yes.
And of course, we have with us Dr. Joanna Cuyava from Australia.
Pleasure to see you again, Elena and Alejandro.
Pleasure to see you too. We will include your bio. We introduced your bio in the first episode, so we'll make sure that you link, and all your links to your wonderful books, your website will be available right below. So just make sure that you see that. Now, today's episode is going to be on fascinating women through the ages. Again, another incredible list. There's a couple of people I wanted to know about as well. And we just had one delicious episode. Now we're having another one.
I am very curious too, because, it's one thing, as I said before, to read about someone and then, what was that energy really, right? What they were connected to really, right? So that's really interesting. I'm interested in all of them because of that, who they really were.
Yeah, it's like we're walking into a candy store for those that like candy. Maybe for some people it's a shoe store. I don't know. Some people love shoes, but anyway, it's like you're like in this wonderland of information that's about to be revealed.
Kind of watching an actor perform their role, and at the same time being able to watch them while they are in their behind the curtains, So
let's begin with Nefertiti.
Nefertiti. Okay, let me find Nefertiti. Yes, she is so mysterious. It's almost impossible to define her. So she was born around 1370 years before Christ, or BCE, before the Common Era. And her story actually is very fascinating because she was found, so nobody knows although she married a pharaoh. So let's maybe start with this. A pharaoh, who tried to reform the Egyptian religion and get rid of all the priests. So, he paid a high price for this because the priests didn't like it. And she was equal to him. So they were ruling really as, two pharaohs. Her story is really fascinating because he came from a royal line, but nobody knows about her beginnings. So the story of Nefertiti is that somebody found a baby and they looked at it and they recognized some divine qualities of her. So I'm not sure what it is in a baby, whether she looked differently, what was there. And that's why she was raised in a particular way, because they knew that she's someone special, maybe, of some divine qualities. She was known for her great beauty and for her great wisdom. She ruled together with her husband, and apparently they practiced something which is called like mating with the gods, right? Either it is either sexual alchemy or connection with other beings. However, they are generally perceived as very benevolent beings, and very often Aton, her husband, was also perceived as a divine being, but not in a way that like other pharaohs of Egypt who were worshipped as gods. He actually didn't like that. He actually didn't like it. He wanted to change this. And they refused to be portrayed in this kind of beautiful Egyptian way, with perfect figures. And he was portrayed in a kind of strange looking man, really a bald head, even although he was a young man, although Egyptians did shave our heads, and slightly protruded stomach, and very skinny, tall legs. And some people say, and long limbs. Some people say, that almost like an alien appearance. And some people argue, especially in this ancient aliens community, that they were benevolent aliens or maybe beings from other dimensions that they met and to do some good on the planet Earth. So they usually, I wonder what their numbers are, and especially her numbers, are perceived in a very positive light. But what is interesting about her, she was supposed to possess also some deeper, higher mystical knowledge also as well, and that she was very benevolent, and that she was recognized even as a baby as something unique and not completely human. Let's put it this way. There are some physical qualities about her that people recognize that she was like otherworldly somehow.
Interesting. Okay. So I believe there's one aspect that will reveal that has that quality. So she incarnated at the frequency of 125, which is impulsive. Born at the frequency of 125, impulsive, and embodied the 125 frequency again. So this impulsiveness has to do with the level of addiction. So this frequency is like this unfulfilled desire, the addiction. Health she viewed through the lens of 125. And it could be the obsessive qualities of body, mind, and soul connection. Finances, 125. Creativity, 175, which is vanity.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
And you said the beauty, right? Relationships, 50. So there's a manipulation aspect there. Personal growth, 200. So she was definitely open to personal growth, right? Philanthropy, the sharing and giving, is linked to vanity, 175.
Wow.
So seeking for an outside approval to build, right? Intuition, 125. And all four aspects of intuition is 125. Now we're going to step into something interesting that you said. So IQ she viewed through the lens of courage, the heroic frequency, 200. Emotional intelligence is 50, disconnected. SQ, this is the part that you said is from other realms, higher realms. And this is the magnetism. And perhaps this is what you've described when they saw her as a baby. There was something maybe luminous that they saw, right? Because she has the luminous frequency of 700 under SQ. So it means that her presence was so magnetic. And this is the frequency we see with rock stars, right? That have low frequencies, but they have this really light, magnetic presence to where millions of people are watching them and they're just mesmerized by them, right? And that's the aspect that I think that was revealed. And then the adversity quotient is 50. So again, this disconnect, disassociation. She enjoyed her role 94%, in the ego 100%, and out of that 100% superior. So definitely with 50 frequency, there's definitely narcissistic tendencies. In the now, 95%, so very connected to herself. Integrity, 58%. Integrity to herself, 95%. Integrity to others, 39%, so quite low.
Quite low.
She served more herself than others. Self-awareness, 92%. Clarity, 96%. So she knew what she was doing. She was very clear. Alignment with divine purpose, 91%. Alignment with personal purpose, 96%. Compassion, 60%. Empathy, 79%. So again, not a very compassionate being. And energy purity, that means how much she embodied the frequency of 125, and that's 95%. Okay. And we did not measure her fifth dimension because overall frequency was 125, but she did have that one number at 700, which is more about her presence when she stepped on and other people saw her. What did they feel? What emotion did they get invoked? And they saw this luminous.
Yes. They were in awe of her, because this is what it like, in awe of her beauty and in awe of her presence.
Presence.
So this is very interesting, because I was very curious about it, because as I said, they both, she has a, like usually very good write-up, that but we don't really know how she was. All we know about her is that her beauty that mesmerized people, basically.
Yes.
And she was attached to this man, to this pharaoh, who, as far as we know, wanted to do a good thing, because he wanted to get rid of a hierarchy in Egypt, and he wanted to get rid of priests and wanted a direct connection with the divinity, so this is what we want, really, right? And she was supposed to be his equal partner. So it's interesting that she perhaps was not aligned with what he was doing, right? But she was somehow this luminous presence around him.
Yeah, magnetic. Maybe she enhanced his frequency. Enhance his presence, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes when you're around people who are bigger than life, which is the SQ, right? It makes you bigger than life.
Yeah.
And that's what you see with celebrities or people who are on stage. Like, let's say we did Freddie Mercury actually had the 125 frequency, and he had a SQ, I believe 700 or maybe even higher, really high, right?
Yes.
It makes you bigger than life, right?
Yes.
But then there's these addictive tendencies. It would be fascinating actually to read her husband, and maybe that would be an episode that we can also
because it would be interesting. Yeah, what was really going on there?
What was going on? Yes. All right. The next one is I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Themistoclea. Okay. So she's very interesting, and we don't know much about her at all. I have to do lots of research, and I had to rely on another scholar, who devoted her life to this. Themistoclea was a Delphic oracle. So if the viewers remember, in Delphi, there was always this priestess, right, who was sitting in front of his vipers, and when they were vapors, and she was uttering this sometimes incomprehensible words that basically were the prophecies, right, or insights to the future and so on. So she was a Delphic oracle and a priestess, but she was also the teacher of the famous philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras, and even in primary school you learn about Pythagoras and so on, right? But people do not sometimes know that he was also a great esoteric philosopher, and all the science of or interest in numerology actually starts with him in the Western world. So it may be going back to Egypt and other places, but he actually really worked with this, not only as a mathematician, but in mystical ways with numbers. And Themistoclea was apparently his teacher. So she added apparently to the esoteric side of his knowledge, because he didn't search only mathematical knowledge. He was looking for esoteric and deeper knowledge, so to speak, mystical knowledge. And apparently she was his teacher and a guide in that. So I'm really curious.
Interesting. Incarnated at the frequency of 540. Was born at the frequency of 200, and her overall frequency was 700. That's where illumination begins, right? Viewed health under 700, finances 600.
And that's the frequency of money, by the way. Frequency of money we measured. Right, a currency is 600.
Oh, really?
Yes. Creativity.
Harmony.
Right. Creativity 700. Relationships 700. Personal growth 900. Philanthropy 700. Intuition 500. And we have clairaudience at 500. Clairsentience 540. Clairvoyance 500. And claircognizance 500. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 475. It's still the analytical.
But this is one of the highest frequencies we've read, besides Albert Einstein at 499. So yeah, it's actually very much in alignment with what you just shared, that she was the teacher for Pythagoras.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
One of the greatest philosophers, and she was his teacher, right?
EQ 700. SQ 500,
Also magnetic.
and AQ 200. I would say that with that 475 under IQ and having 700 under EQ, that allows the person to amplify the knowledge that they have acquired and apply it in ways to which they create new ways from there, an expanded version of what they've learned. Yes.
Powerful.
Yes. Indie Joy 95%. In the Eagle 60%, and 55% of that was the inferior version of the Eagle. In the Now 99%. Integrity 100%. Integrity to self 100%. Integrity to others 100%. Self-awareness 100%. Clarity 100%. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Compassion 100%. Empathy 100%. And energy purity 100%. And when it comes to dimensions, she was experiencing the 10th dimension 98% of the time.
So yeah, she was a channel. She was an oracle.
She was an oracle, right? So she was not just a priestess, and she passed her knowledge. And it's quite interesting with this higher beings sometimes that I, read about. They do not leave much trace behind them. They don't like publish a book or put my name in a stone so people remember, right? They just kind of come, give, and go.
Yes.
Right. So this is her story, because it's almost impossible to find any information about her.
Amazing. I know when we read it, I was like, I want to know who that woman was.
It's difficult to know it because she her only through Pythagoras, that because he mentions her. I learned from her.
Interesting. Okay, the next one is Theodora, Emperor Justinian's wife.
Yes, Justinian's wife. So this is quite interesting. So Justinian, the wife of the great Justinian, by great I mean great emperor. So of the Byzantine Empire in Constantinople. And she has an amazing story, and it's difficult to know what her story really is. So that's why I'm really interested in your readings, because her story is mostly from history. We know that he met her. She was an actress, most likely, or a dancer, which was one and the same thing at that time, right? So you're an actress or a dancer because you had to be skilled in this arts. And he madly fell in love with. He married her. Not only he didn't make her a concubine or a girlfriend, he married her. And apparently she has become his major advisor. So what historians say, that when there was a big rebellion in Constantinople against the emperor, he just wanted to run, and she says, no, you stay. We stay and we keep the power. You're the emperor and I'm the empress. And he was really very much impressed with this, because, they stayed and they won, so to speak. So he managed to hold on to the power. However, there's a historian, Procopius, that lived at the same time, who clearly hated her, but he gives a different kind of scandalous story to this. So he said she was really a prostitute, and this is what she was doing as a dancer, and he goes almost into like pornographic descriptions, and you think like he enjoyed describing it a little bit too much. She manipulated the emperor, to get what she wanted, and she actually was a evil woman who was very sensual and lascivious and all about sex. So we have these two completely different versions of Theodora, who was in the same way definitely historically a very powerful woman. She was married to a great emperor, a man of great power, but who she was really, let's see.
You want to know? The drum roll. Okay, this is going to clarify a lot. A lot. So she incarnated at the frequency of 125, which is the impulsive, the addiction. Born at the frequency of 50, disconnect. And her oral frequency was 125. So again, this is the addiction frequency, the impulsive nature
Yes.
So it very much aligns with some of the things you've described. She viewed health through the frequency of 50, so disconnected from body, mind, soul connection. Finances, which is also linked to power, right? She viewed through 125, this unfulfilled, impulsive desire. Creativity, 125. Relationships, 50. So did she manipulate? Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
125 and 50, she came as that, so yes. Personal growth, 125. She was addicted to that. Philanthropy, the art of sharing, came out of her fear and worry. So she shared because, right, of her belief system. Now, intuition, 200. So she had this lens of like heroic lens to how she filtered and trusted her intuition.
Bravery.
Right.
Bravery, yes.
Yeah.
She was brave in this situation, when he wanted to run, she says, no, you stay, we stay, right? So.
Yes. Clairaudience, 125. Clairsentience, 200. Clairvoyance, 200. Claircognizance, 125. Now, this is the interesting part. IQ, 200. EQ, emotional intelligence, 50, combined with that relationship and the frequency. SQ, this is her magnetic nature. What lured him in? The frequency of 500.
Okay.
And AQ, 50.
Yes.
Adversity, right? She was like when somebody's faced with adversity at 50, most of the time the way they cope with situation is by disassociation, right? She enjoyed her role 92%, ego 100%, and 100% superior. So absolutely narcissistic.
Yes.
In the now, 99%. Integrity, 46%. Integrity to herself, 85%. So that means she wasn't even fully in integrity towards herself. Integrity to others, 31%. So whoever that other person that was writing, he was spot on. We have to give him credit. Self-awareness, 94%. Clarity, 99%. Alignment with divine purpose, 96%. And alignment with personal purpose, 95%. So she actually came here to play that role, right? Compassion, 74%, empathy, 77%, and energy purity, 62%. And when you mentioned her, I actually thought about another person who also lived in the modern day, in more 16th century Istanbul, right? The Sultan Suleiman and his wife, who also rose to power from being his slavery in his harem. And she had very different frequencies. So this is, another woman in power, right?
That's right. Another woman in power, right? In the same place, just 10 centuries later.
Yes. Exactly.
So that's very interesting because I always thought, Procopius, he's just making it up because he didn't like a woman that is powerful and sexy at the same time. But it seems that perhaps this time he was right? So
he was right.
So manipulated him, he said, she sold it. Yeah. So it was his secret history. It was just for his friends because, he was afraid to.
To be executed probably because of his writing.
That's right. Yeah, you don't want to go against emperor's wife, right?
So it's amazing that manuscript or the writings were left and discovered.
Yeah, they were discovered. So we know Procopius' secret history of Procopius.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, there you go. He gets a credit finally after 10 centuries later, or how many?
I wasn't just gossiping, he says, right? So you see, I wasn't just gossiping.
He wasn't.
That's right. Yes.
We set him straight.
There's enough evidence to support his premise. Next is Tiano, one of Pythagoras.
Okay. Tiano, so around 600 before Christ, because she was wife of Pythagoras, but like with Themistoclea, we just only know of her simply because through her association with Pythagoras. So we know that she was his wife, and so this is all we know about her. That she was his wife. There were claims that she was his equal intellectually, and in fact, when he died, she took over his school because he had a very famous school. as a great philosopher and mathematician, and she ran the school. So she continued the line. So the school didn't close when he died. So this is all we know about Tiana. This is all that we can know about her.
Now the world is going to know more about her.
Yes, about and off.
Yes.
She incarnated at the frequency of 540.
Wow.
Yes, at the bliss
Mm-hmm.
frequency. Was born at the frequency of 475. Yeah, analytical mind. And vibrated at the frequency of 700.
Wow.
Beginning of illumination.
I'm going to take a note and say we're going to read Pythagoras. We have to.
Yes, definitely. And Simon. Do you write Simon?
Yeah.
From the previous episode.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Viewed health at 700, finances 600, creativity 900,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
relationships 700, personal growth 900,
She's amazing.
philanthropy 700, intuition 540. With an intuition, we have clairaudience at 540, clairsentience 700, clairvoyance 500, and claircognizance at 540. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 400, also high, right?
Very high. Yeah.
Yes.
Considering most humans are between 200 and 250 in the IQ. Yeah, she could handle his
That's a
school.
long time ago too, right? When I'm sure our frequency was even lower, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
EQ 700, SQ 500, and AQ 500.
It's remarkable.
Yes, definitely.
amazing.
In the joy, 100%. In the ego, 44%. And 58% of that was the inferior version of the ego. In the now, 100%. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 100%. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Compassion, 100%. Empathy, 100%. Energy purity, 100%. And when it comes to dimensions, she was experiencing the 10th dimension
Wow.
98% of the time.
She was a luminous being.
Yes.
For sure. And she's like the teacher.
Which is at the same level than Toclia, yes.
This is what I wanted to say. It sounds like he married his teacher, right? Like there's the same readings. And I think you said it, money also 600%.
Yes, these are very unusual numbers.
Not 600%, 600, and something else. Inferior ego 58%. It's almost like the same reading.
Similar. Or maybe they met at that school, you know, whoever his teacher.
I know, like maybe it sounds like the same person, or maybe he was himself a really, really high vibrational being, and you know he learned from this kind of person and married the same, you know, similar person on the same level. But it sounded like very similar. This is really amazing. And thank you for this, simply because as I say, like we really historically don't know anything about them. We just know, okay, she was married to him, and you know, she and you know, as an academic, you'd say she must have been smart because she ran the school, right?
Yeah, and she was, because I think 400.
But she was much more than that, right? But she was much more than that.
She carried truly divine wisdom within her. She embodied it.
Yes, and her EQ is exactly the same as Pythagoras' teacher at 700. They both have the EQ of 700.
Yeah, remarkable.
Yes, similar SQ at 500. I mean, they have quite a few similarities, right?
Yeah, this is what I was thinking. Wow, it's almost the same.
Yes, yes. All right, the next one is Hypatia.
Yes. So Hypatia or Hypatia, she is a historically really well-known person. So it's a 4th century ancient Alexandria, which was the center of culture and learning in the West and between East and West, right? A great library of Alexandria when all knowledge from East and West was apparently collected, which later the Library of Alexandria was burned, right? So, but it seemed to be a collection of all knowledge in the world. And her father was a philosopher, and I think he was one of the heads in the library. There was a school in the library as well. He was a philosopher and a mathematician, and so was she. She was a philosopher belonging to a Neoplatonic school, which means pretty much rejects all the body. You know, it's all about spirit and the mind, you know, returning to higher dimensions kind of way, right? But without the body. So there was a little bit of a contempt, negative attitude towards body and embodiment. You know, they just wanted to go back, you know, so Neoplatonic school. And she herself was a famous philosopher and mathematician as well. But a little bit like Athena, because of the philosophy she practiced, so she completely disconnected from being her feminine side, although she was a well-known beauty at the same time. So she was not only extremely intelligent, but she was also beautiful. So there's the story, true or not, that one of her students approached her and he said, I am so much in love with you, you know, you're so wise and so beautiful. And she basically said, this is just a body is just like a, you know, old coat, you know, don't look at it. This body is actually not me. You know, like, so you actually insult me by telling me that I'm beautiful, meaning like it has nothing to do with me, this body. And she has a very tragic story because a bishop of Alexandria, Cyril of Alexandria, who, by the way, was later made a saint, which personally upsets me a lot, because he said this woman is, you know, she didn't want to convert to Christianity, right? And she, because she had her own beliefs, and he incited the mob in Alexandria, you know, so they actually broke into the Alexandrian library, dragged her body through the streets and tortured her in a terrible way until she died.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
It's a horrible story, and it's historical story, so it's not the story of myths, you know. It's a horrible story, and you know, soon later also the Library of Alexandria was burned. So it's kind of, you know, it's this kind of tragic story. So this is how we know it, and she's usually revered as, you know, actually revered as, you know, with great sadness, because here she was this very rare example of a woman who was allowed, from an academic point of view, I don't know what her vibration is, you know, who was allowed to get an education, who excelled, and she was a well-known teacher on her own merit. And then, you know, this is the end. She met from a fanatical, basically, crowd of people who were incited by a bishop who was very ambitious himself, you know, so he wanted to improve his standing by getting rid of this woman. So that's what we know historically.
So this story actually reflects in one of the numbers.
Yes.
Very well. It's unbelievable. I had no idea this was a story, but yes. She incarnated at the frequency of 500, which is flow, state, love. Born at 400s, analytical mind. Overall frequency 540, bliss. She experienced true bliss. Health, which is interesting because it's body, mind, and soul connection, even though there's, as you said, historically, she followed this disconnect from the body, but she had this blissful connection between body, mind, and soul, which is 540. Finances, she viewed through the lens of 400. Reason, analytical approach, intellect. Creativity, she had a very creative way of being because it's a frequency of 700.
Wow, yes.
Relationships, 500. Personal growth, 540. Philanthropy, 540. Intuition, 700. And under all aspects of intuition, it was 700. IQ. So this is the highest IQ we're going to reveal so far, besides Mary Magdalene and some other avatars, because she was a being, right? 500. Her IQ was 500.
Wow.
Genius, right? EQ, emotional intelligence, 700. SQ, 700. So she also has this magnetic, bigger than life presence. AQ, when she was faced with adversity, it was 400 for her. So 400 again, she employed her mind, reasoning. So here's positive thing, because I don't want you to think negative that this was tragedy, because she actually enjoyed her all 96%.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Ego 63%, and out of that 64% inferior. In the now 94%. Integrity 100% to self and 100% to others. Self-awareness and clarity 100%. Now, alignment with divine purpose, the purpose she came here, whatever it was here to experience, 100%. But the number that is linked to her death is her alignment with personal purpose, which is 85%. So that usually will tell us that something happens in that person's life, that because personal alignment with personal purpose is linked to more of the personality self, right? Versus the soul aspect, which is the divine purpose. 100% compassion, 100% empathy, 100% energy purity. And again, this is the third person we're reading. 98% of the time she experienced 10th dimension. So she was embodying whatever she was practicing and teaching.
That's why it's probably this conversation with a student, like it, you know, like I'm really not this person that you're telling me you have a crush on, right? Like she's like explain, like I am actually in a different dimension. I'm joking, but yeah, that would explain, and she really embodied that. So it's quite interesting that because she was look, it's very difficult as you see, even for a historian to find good records, historical records about women like that. And she is so well documented because she was so influential, you know, like she was so well known also, right? So as a philosopher, as a mathematician, and the School of Alexandria and the Library of Alexandria was like the place in ancient world to get a knowledge, education, whether esoteric or mundane, you know. So, and she was at the center of this, and she was ahead of it. And she was also well known that despite her beauty, she had no vanity. Yeah, so your numbers.
Well, you see it in her numbers, because there's
right. Like there's no vanity there. Like she just was like, it's just like a dress, right? Like don't pay attention to this dress, right? It's nothing to do with me. This beauty has nothing to do with me. This is what she basically told him. So so thank you for this, because you know she met such a horrible death. You know, but the times were brutal, right? So
yes,
unexpected.
Sure. Yes. Okay. The next person here, I don't even know how to pronounce this, but Alejandro will do it. The high priestess, the
Yes.
Say it again.
I'm just guessing too. I think it's Enjueduana.
Enjueduana. Okay.
Enjueduana, yes.
Yes. So we were speaking in previous episode about goddess Inanna. So Enjueduana was the priestess of goddess Inanna. So she was a priestess in her temple. And she herself came from a royal family, and I think she was a daughter of a king, and if I remember correctly, his name was Sargos, the daughter of King Sargos in Assyria. And she chose to be a priestess. So she was a princess, and she became a priestess to goddess Inanna. She became famous, and we know of her. We know very little about her life. This is all we know about her life. She became famous because she was very talented as a poetess. And she wrote these beautiful love poems about Inanna and her lover Dumuzi, which we discussed in a previous episode. So which she describes as above sensual and spiritual love. So she writes it she writes the poems in the first person. So it's basically I am Inanna, right? So I am Inanna. So she embodied Inanna, and her poems are very beautiful, but extremely sometimes very sensual, but sometimes graphic, but in a very beautiful way. So it's not a pornography. But basically, I'm calling upon. I'm calling upon Dumuzi, you know, and I can, if you want, I can even read something from this. But basically, it is like basically, come to me, my lover, you know, my vulva is ready for you. Where are
Oh
you?
my God.
Come, my vulva, right? This is my black boat, and I'll take you to heaven, right? And then there is, she writes the lyrics for the Mutsi, who says, I will plow your vulva. Wait for me, I'll plow your vulva, right? So, but it's written in a beautiful language, like my vulva is a boat of heaven. Come, and yeah, so this way, and it's supposed to show, you know, be an example of what I call in my book sexual alchemy, you know. So basically that there's this possibility of a union between man and woman, that you actually embody the principles of divine principles of the masculine and feminine, and it can be experienced in ecstatic sexuality, you know, or ecstatic eros at its highest possible level. And then you can actually react the beginnings of the world, so to speak. You can expand your consciousness to a highest level. So we know of her because of these beautiful poems, who actually have a beautiful energy when you read them. So it's like the opposite to pornography, although they are quite, you know, graphic sometimes, but they're so beautifully written, and you know that they are written actually, I mean, I don't know, I'm just talking about my feeling, because you're reading her frequencies, you know, from another level, you know, and seeing sexuality from a completely different level than people normally perceive it. So that's my take on her, and this is what we know of her historically.
Wonderful. She incarnated at the frequency of 200 and was born at the frequency of 200 and vibrated at the frequency of 200.
Interesting, because that was Inanna's frequency, because you said she channeled that, right? But no, sorry, Inanna's frequency was 400.
Yes.
So she was, right, sorry, 400, right.
But under the aspect of health is similar to Inanna.
Yeah, same.
At 400.
Mm-hmm.
And finances, the same, 200.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity, 200. Relationships, 50.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised. Yes. But
Personal growth.
About it later. Okay.
Okay.
Personal growth, 200. Philanthropy, 200. Intuition, 400. Under intuition, we have clairaudience at 500.
So that's channeling hearing, right?
Yes.
Clairsentience, 400. Clairvoyance, 400. And claircognizance, 400. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ, 350. EQ, 200. SQ, 500. So she was also magnetic, right? Mm-hmm. AQ, 200.
And she was quite intelligent at 350 IQ, right? Compared to like the average. But I would say she probably embodied more of the masculine energy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Because she relied more on her intellect versus on her mind versus the divine intelligence, which is EQ. Mm-hmm.
In the joy, 96%. In the ego, 100%. And 100% of that was the superior version of the ego.
Yes, princess and a high priestess, you know. She was a princess and a high priestess, so obviously.
There you go. Yeah, narcissistic with 15 relationships, yeah.
In the now, 77%. Integrity, 69%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 44%. Self-awareness, 93%. Clarity, 92%. Alignment with divine purpose, 94%. Alignment with personal purpose, 98%. Compassion, 71%. Empathy, 92%. Energy purity, 84%. And when it comes to dimensions, believe it or not, she was experiencing the fifth dimension 16% of the time.
It makes sense when you were saying that she actually was bringing information in that is not like you said pornographic, which would be lower frequencies, but she was channeling actually something higher.
Yes, because her
She did. So thank you. It's super fantastic. It's super interesting because she definitely, you know, when you read these poems, they are so sensual, and yet they actually, you know, they don't have this. They have a spiritual effect on you, you know, like you know that they come from somewhere else, that this is like divine poetry, although it talks about something that is usually portrayed in a very, you know, brass way, right? So this will really confirm what, you know, what I thought about her. At the same time, when you talk about her relationship 50, right, you said 50,
Yes.
it is quite interesting because although she was channeling all of this, you know, sexual alchemy between the divine masculine, divine feminine principle in erotic rapture, at the same time, you know, she was doing this thing that is called, you know, when she and other priestesses, you know, would call for upon younger men, and they would choose the best looking men or whatever, and they would embody the goddess, and the man would play the part of the Dumasio, which is the Muzi, I'm sorry, of her, of Inanna's lover. So basically, it was completely without any attachment. It was just basically like enacting Inanna and the Muzi in a temple. Then they would dispose of a man, then off with you, right?
That makes sense. The 50 frequency, yeah.
So this is like, it was just to have the experience that Inanna had with the Muzi, and so the men part play their part, and then, you know, they would be asked to leave the temple, right?
Be disposed.
Disposed of, wow. And that's very narcissistic too.
Unattached.
Very unattached. Yes.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
Amazing.
Confirmations.
Unbelievable.
One after the other, right?
I'm sure they are like
they're all here
looking at us and listening to everything and smiling at everything
we're like,
saying.
oh yeah, they're getting it. They're getting it.
Dr. Joanna is up to something. She knows what's up.
Oh yes. Okay, the next one is Diotima.
Diotima is again a little bit of a controversial person, and we don't know much of her, except that, and there's all kinds of contradictory information about her. But the information that I am now conveying to at the moment is that she was written about by Plato in his dialogues, right? The famous Greek philosopher Plato. And in a couple of his dialogues, but especially the really famous one called the Symposium, which is the dialogue on love, right? It's the volume on love, when Socrates explains and other people talk also about different levels of love and so on. And this dialogue also features Diotima, who explains the art of erotic spirituality. So how it's a little bit what Enwenada was doing in her poems, right? Like how eros can elevate human being, that it doesn't have to be lower eros, but it could be also a higher eros. In certain times, she was also confused with another woman called Aspasia, and I don't think we are discussing her today, who was Pericles, who was a partner, who was a leader of Athens. But pretty much historians agree that there were two different women. And only in later age, people confuse these two women, although they lived roughly at the same time. So Diotima is almost like explaining the art of spiritual tantra in the dialogues of Plato, but in, you know, using different vocabulary. That's what we know about Diotima.
So here we go.
Perfect. Oh
perfect. This blows my mind. When we were working on this project, it took a while, just so everyone knows it's a lot of work putting it together. And I said, oh my God, we just felt with every person we were reading that they were present with us. And this is going to, of course, be such a confirmation for your work and your research. I love it. So she incarnated at the frequency of 125. Again, the addiction, impulsiveness. Yes. Born at the frequency of 50. And her overall frequency was 125. Again, the 125 is the embodiment of impulsive nature, addiction, right? Health, 125. Finances, 50. Creativity, 125. So creating from that
Yes.
constant, like hungry, unfulfilled desire, right? Relationships, 125. We should measure Tantra, what Tantra vibrates at.
Right. Yeah.
Personal growth, I think you should write it down before we forget, 125. I mean, this is like perfect 125. Philanthropy, 125.
Wow.
Intuition, 125. Under intuition, clairsentience is 50. I'm sorry, clairaudience is 50. Clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance are 125. Now, IQ, 200. EQ, 50. So again, disconnected from the emotional, right, intelligence, and also I would say disconnected from the wisdom itself, right? The SQ, which is the magnetism that lured people in, or the men in, was bliss, 540.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And and the AQ is 50.
I can think that she was very good communicating what she wanted to.
What she wanted to express or whatever she wanted to get out of it. Yeah. She enjoyed
great communicator.
You feel that?
With the yes.
She was very clear in her frequency. Yes, Joanna.
Because, very interesting thing, because there are hardly any women in Plato's dialogue, So she's like one of very few, maybe the only one woman. And so there had to be something about her that he even considered her. And we are talking also about ancient Athens, where women, all of this beautiful culture, architecture, philosophy, and everything, but women were, basically just to be mothers and wives, and were kept in the kitchen. Nobody would talk to a woman and ask a question. And here we have her. The only exception was that they had what is called the heterai or hetere, which means what we would call high-level escorts who are extremely well educated. And then they were also versed in both in the art of conversation, in the art of philosophy, and in the art of lovemaking. So sometimes this kind of women, like in this film, for example, Dangerous Beauty, about the Venetian courtesan, they would be allowed into the company of men and actually carry on different topics. But she must have been somehow exceptional, and that's why the charisma, you said, right? Like 500 or something.
540, yes.
540.
To be allowed, because Plato was like the philosopher then in Athens, and he cared nothing for women, and also culturally he cared nothing for women. So invite her, actually it is important enough to write it down, is in itself amazing. So she must have had some presence, even if her vibrations were not.
Yes, so. It could have maybe perhaps boosted his ego because of the attention she was getting.
You know who has this frequency? Just so you kind of, the audience also grasps it. Hugh Hefner.
Hugh. Oh, yeah, the same frequency?
Yes.
Same frequency.
Wow. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
So
okay.
Similar environment in a way, just a different gender, right?
Exactly. Right. The reversal of the amount of women around, right? Or the amount of men. So she enjoyed her role 94%, in the ego 100%, and 100% superior. And perhaps this is also, people who are more narcissistic in tendencies with those frequencies also could be very convincing.
Yes.
With her magnetic presence.
No doubt. They have no doubt, right? Like,
right, exactly.
I'm right. This is how it is, right?
They believe their truth, right?
Fully.
It's the only truth, too. Yeah.
In the now, 100%. Integrity, 65%. Her integrity to herself was 100%. Integrity to others, 46%. So she was skillful. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. She came to play her role, and she played it at 100% divine purpose and 100% personal purpose.
That's why she was so convincing. Makes total sense, right? 100% clarity, 100% awareness.
Yes.
And 100% ego, and it's the superior.
She was a straight shooter.
Straight shooter. And, and we have to remember that this dialogue is about Socrates and her talking also. So Socrates, the great philosopher, but he was an ugly little man, and here was this, 540 charisma, hetera, talking about eros in very exciting ways, right? So
She sparked some kind of desire in all of them.
It boosted his ego for sure.
Yeah. Compassion 69%, empathy 97%, energy purity 88%. And she didn't have, fifth dimension in her chart. So this was definitely lower dimensions, but hey, she played it out really well.
Yeah, it's fully aligned.
Oh, hold on, we'll do this one next. Okay.
How come?
Because I wanted to we're debating. There's one person I wanted to know.
I'm not debating. You are changing it for me. Okay, this is a difficult one to pronounce, but Hatshepsut.
That's right. It's ancient Egyptian. Nobody can really pronounce it. So Hatshepsut, I guess. So she died, we know, in 1458 before Christ, or before Common Era. So she was, quite recently, we thought she was the first female pharaoh, but she wasn't. Apparently, there were others, and at least one more. But she was the first female pharaoh. But because of the times in which she lived, she had to pretend. Everybody knew that she was a woman, but she would have to attach a beard, when she was in public, going on parades. She liked that, going on parades like a real pharaoh. So it's almost like I have these masculine qualities. I basically saying I have what it takes to be a pharaoh, so I'm really a guy, right? Something like that. So because, pharaohs have this kind of extended beard, especially shaped beard. So she had it attached, it's I kick ass, basically.
Don't mess with me.
Don't mess with me just because I'm a girl, right? So this is Hatshepsut. But what is really interesting in this, because in my book I talk a lot about sexual alchemy, so I was looking who was doing what. So I was actually found her in connection with Nefertiti, because she lived around roughly 75 years before Nefertiti, right? I think we discussed her last time, right?
Yes.
Last time. So 75 years before her, and she was also well known, but she didn't have a partner really that was of any consequence. She also married a brother, but she pushed him to the side. He was a sidekick. Nobody cared about him because she made sure she is the pharaoh. So he was of no consequence. I'm not sure if he died later. I do not remember. I must say just right now. But she went to the temple, and apparently in the temple she mated with the gods, and this is what actually was giving her power. She was going there to inner sanctum of a temple, perform some sexual ritual, but it was no man, not like in Huenana, who had men coming to embody Dumuzi and in Inanna. She was actually directly copulating with gods, apparently, or with the embodiment of a god. Okay, so this is what was the source of her power. But with this kind of stories, we never know what is true, what is not, because sometimes, especially when powerful women were concerned, people would make up stories because they would say she couldn't be powerful by herself. She couldn't have the charisma by herself. So she had to do something, dark or unusual to actually justify staying in power, right? So I'm really curious what your readings are, because again here we don't know what is true, what is not. This is just
exactly
different stories, right?
Yes, she incarnated at the frequency of 125, was born at the frequency of 50, and her overall frequency was 125. She viewed health at 50, finances 125, creativity 125, relationships 50.
As you said, disposed of. Yeah, right. There you go.
Little brother. Yeah.
Personal growth, 125. Philanthropy, 125. Intuition, 50. And then we have clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance at 50. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 175, EQ 50, SQ 200, and AQ 30. In the joy, 84%. In the ego, 100%. And 100% of that was the superior version of the ego.
So the narcissist.
In the now, 98%. Integrity, 50%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 19%.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, 97%. Clarity, 97%. Alignment with divine purpose, 69%.
She was out of alignment.
Out of alignment, yeah. Alignment with personal purpose, 97%. Compassion, 67%. Empathy, 92%. Energy purity, 46%.
And you know what I will say, because that's really low energy purity, that she, because you talked about her connecting to some other outside forces, and most likely she was possessed. This very low number in energy purity and her frequency is an indication that she maybe was connecting to low frequency beings that were fueling and feeding her
information, right? In what she called gods, but actually they were low vibrational frequency entities.
That's right. So, because by gods, people think something supernatural, by supernatural, inhuman, right? Basically inhuman, but sometimes this kind of demonic almost powers.
Yes,
exactly.
Lower frequencies, and apparently this is what was going on in the temple, and it was a source of the power. So it's very interesting because for me, she came across also someone who, really wanted to be in power. And she managed to stay in power, and she played her part, as this powerful figure, I think the way I read her just historically is this is what she wanted. She just wanted to be a pharaoh, right? And
at any cost.
Yeah, whatever it takes, exactly, at any cost.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Now, this person I've been wanting to find out. Eleanor of Aquitaine.
Yes, I actually really like her, so I'm just really curious what you have on her. So she lived in the 12th century. She's a very unusual person, and because it's much later, we have much more information about her. So she was a very unusual person because in the times that women had no power again, she was, I'm going to say it like, because I like her, but we'll see whether she's worthy of this. She was lucky because she was the only child, I think, as far as I know. So it means she was born to a very powerful family and she inherited the wealth. So the big part of what is Western France nowadays, Aquitaine, she inherited it. So France was like a small place then around Paris, and there was southern France, which was Provence, which was completely separate also. France wasn't united then. And Aquitaine was there like this huge power. And she inherited, I think, at the age of 16, if I'm not wrong. And she was a well-known beauty. She was a poetess, and she loved poetry and learning. So she invited lots of troubadours, which means the poets who were singing love songs from the southern France, which they came from, and they wrote songs about her, and she was also writing songs and so on. She was extremely intelligent, as far as we know. And she married King of France. I think he's Louis IX. She married King of France, but she couldn't give him a son, right? And in those days, you had to give a king a son. She had some daughters with him. So it started to be, and he was a very pious king, and she wasn't particularly pious. She loves the courtly life and so on. So when he decided to go on a crusade, as kings did in those days, right? Usually the queens and all women stay behind, but she said, no way, right? I brought Aquitaine to your kingdom, you owe me. So, you know, he had to take on a crusade with him, right? So she is one of his very few women, you know, who actually went on a crusade. And when she was on a crusade, and she apparently enjoyed it a lot, she liked traveling as well. She met this French noble who actually was her uncle. So this is against history / gossip, because as I said, sometimes powerful women were portrayed in a negative way. So I'm curious what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And she started to actually plot against her husband, you know, with this uncle, and also had an affair with him, you know. So she was a very colorful person. And upon return to Paris, she had enough of Louis IX, the French king, and they argued about this thing that she couldn't give him the son. Mm-hmm. So she went to the Pope and she says, you give me a divorce. And the Pope, you know, and the Pope said, I can't give you a divorce, and so on. So, you know, but she went there and says, by herself, left the husband, says, I want a divorce. And then, you know, she worked on Louis XIX until he said, okay, we need to divorce. She says, you need a boy. I cannot give you a boy. You know, we need a divorce. And finally, they both went to the Pope, and the Pope gave them a divorce. So, but just before that, she met Henry, a prince from a nobleman from England, who later became Henry II, I believe. And as it's, you know, Catherine Hepburn actually played her. And in this film, Lion in Winter, she says, we broke commandments on the spot, right? They met, there was this huge chemistry, and they just went for it. And he was her junior. I'm not sure how much younger he was, but
he was 19 from what I was reading.
Right? Yeah, he was 19. Like 30. He was very young, and, you know, she already had lots of experience, right? So, and what happened once she managed to divorce Louis IX, she married Henry II, and, you know, became the Queen of England now, right? And because now Aquitaine became part of England, which created all kinds of problems between France and in England, wars and so on. But after a while, you know, and she was a mother of, for example, Richard the Lionheart and so on, you know, another great crusader and so on. But I think either she was portrayed like that, or perhaps she was like that. She liked, you know, the politics. So she eventually got into trouble with Henry II as well, because as far as we know, she created a rebellion against him, you know, when she disagreed. And she was actually imprisoned for a while by him. But there was this kind of, in a way, love-hate relationship between them, because they loved each other, but perhaps both of them loved power too much. So this is what history says. But as I say, but at the same time, there's something for me really likable about her. So I'm not sure if I'm just, you know, fell into her charisma or something, but it wasn't the way I see it. And please correct me with your readings. She wasn't really mean. She was just playing with power a little bit like the Greek goddesses did. So I wonder what your
Oh yes,
did she have like 6 children with her?
I don't know how many,
yeah,
but
she had several children with
many.
John, you know, and Richard the Lionheart, which was the most famous one.
One became the
King of
England
yeah.
later. One of them.
She incarnated at the frequency of 400.
Wow. Yeah.
Born at the frequency of 100, and her overall frequency was 450. So yeah, this is like a very intellectual person. Health she viewed through the lens of 400. Finances 500. Creativity 500. So there you go. She said she wrote poetry, right?
Yes.
Yes. Now relationships. This is the aspect you touched upon. Is 125. She had this addictive nature in relationships. Personal growth 400. Philanthropy 400. So you like her. Intuition.
So the story with the uncle was probably true.
True. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intuition 400. Under intuition, clairaudience 500. So that's also her ability to hear, right? What she was writing. Yeah. Clairsentience 400. Clairvoyance 400, and claircognizance, her inner knowing, was 500. So she was well equipped. IQ 310. So yes, definitely way above average. EQ 200, SQ, so this is her magnetism, 500, and AQ 200. She was courageously, and bravely faced challenging situations in life. She enjoyed her role 97%, ego 100%, and out of that 61% superior ego. So she was very convincing. In the now, 90%. Integrity, 83%. Integrity to herself, 100%. Integrity to others, 54%. Maybe that's why her husband put her in jail. The 125 and her integrity drove him nuts. Not that it's an excuse, but
similar numbers than a few politicians out there.
Oh yeah. Self-awareness, 84%. Clarity, 95%. So she was focused. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose, 100%. So she achieved everything she imagined, right, for herself. Compassion, 84%. Empathy, 97%. Energy purity, 92%. And she experienced the fifth dimension 41% of the time.
Wow.
There's her writing.
That's fantastic, because there is something really when you read about her. There is something, some people you read like, I don't know, like Theodora or something, but for example, but you just like her, that there was something in the flow, so to speak, about her. At the same time, there was this element of manipulation or power, that's why I said a little bit like a Greek goddess.
The 125 relationships, totally on point. So you absolutely got her right.
And in her case, because she was born at the frequency of 100.
Yes.
And so she went through a long period of time to where she was vibrating at lower frequencies, right? And relationships was the only aspect that she was dragging, that she couldn't transcend completely like the other aspects, because it was probably...
but her integrity was at 83 overall, so that probably had to do with that as well.
So because the relationships was something that she thought, I can't transcend this, because if I do transcend this, I'm not going to be able to accomplish my
that's right.
goals.
So relationships really are there for me to accomplish my goals. This is
exactly.
how
there you go. She used it as a tool.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
To remain in power and so forth.
So that concludes the fascinating women.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I'm really happy that, because actually this reading about Eleanor of Aquitaine just confirms what I felt about her and read about her, right? So this is wonderful. And for me, another kind of revelation was actually Nefertiti, because I thought that she would be really high, right, on the scale, because she was with this man who I believe also the far of it wanted to do good. And then Theodora, I was not sure. And so Procopius was right, okay, the historian who said, right, oh, no, she was manipulating. And I really like also your readings about I love all of the readings, but Theano and Themistoclea, especially because, we really don't know anything about them. So we know they existed and they were attached to this man one way or another, but the fact that they had such higher readings, is very encouraging, and something that we can learn from, that they came and brought knowledge, wisdom with them and shared with us, right?
Do we know what school they were a part of? Because this would be fascinating to know, because a lot of people follow these mystery schools and they tend to have more, are mystery schools from Egypt more of like Isis lineage? And I'm wondering what these other women, what was that lineage?
So, mystery schools from Egypt do not have to be necessarily Isis, because there are all kinds of mystery schools, hermeneutical schools and so on, that comes from Hermes.
Hermes, yes.
Hermes, right? So most of the actually mystery schools in Egypt come from Hermes.
And that was very high frequency, by the way. We did a whole episode.
Thank you. I have to then watch it because I missed it. Because most of the hermeneutical schools, as they called, or mystery schools in Egypt, actually come from his lineage.
Yes.
So, and Pythagoras started his own school. So it's interesting that this school was connected to the Oracle of Delphi, right? Which is very kind of mysterious,
More
almost
esoteric.
ephemeral connection with other higher dimensions, because they were just, basically being almost like automatic speaking, right? They got a message and they didn't understand the message. They just passed the message back to the people, some of the oracles, right? But this one, it seems that she was had very high high readings, right? But very often an oracle would get such a download, so to speak, from high dimensions that she would just and she wouldn't interpret it because she wouldn't know this is what came, right? So I'm just a mouthpiece for high dimensions.
Yeah. And Hermes was an avatar because we revealed him. He
Yes.
had 1,000 frequencies.
Similar
Yes.
than Jeshua's.
Yeah, identical.
Mary Magdalene.
Actually, identical
I mean,
frequencies. Yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. So actually, mystery schools in Egypt mostly come from him.
Hermes. Okay. Fascinating.
Okay.
This concludes our another amazing episode. This is so much fun. Wow.
For me, it was a real treat. So thank you, Elena and Alejandro, because it just gives me a completely different insight into this. And we are all humans. So even as an academics, you read different papers, different books, and somebody likes this person, somebody doesn't like that person. They find some contradictory information, but it's a little bit like trying to put different pieces of a puzzle and they do not fit, right? When you have a kind of much more holistic approach towards this.
Yes,
that's
definitely.
wonderful.
It's going to make it easier, right, to put the pieces together.
Absolutely, and especially the revelations about Theodora. It's quite cute, right? Like,
yes,
the historian was right. The historian was right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, and absolutely, the people will be able to find you with the link that's going to be posted below.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.